A-grade, top-of-the-range, Rolls-Royce, ugly.
Yep,
These are your words.
they are my words.
The name of your memoir is Ugly.
I knew I'd have to write it a lot, so I picked a short word.
I mean, as far as I can tell, this is as much about bad haircuts as it is about anything else.
There are a significant number of bad haircuts in my life.
So what's your relationship to beauty, if you have named ugly at the centre of so much?
I think I am very appreciative of beauty. I think there's an aesthetic standard which people can fall within a range of normal, and I think there's an aesthetic standard that people can classify. People are classified as beautiful, and I think there's an aesthetic standard where people who fail to meet that can be classified as ugly. I don't think there's necessarily any attributes or characteristics that necessarily go with those characteristics, but there's nothing wrong with beauty. I'm particularly appreciative of it.
I mean, is it more to you than the skin you're in or the skin that people are in? Compost can be potentially...
Compost might be beautiful to Costa, but, no, absolutely it can be, but I don't... I think there's something on the outside that can be beautiful and something on the outside and the inside that can be beautiful. I imagine there are a number of people here who consider themselves short. I'm sure you don't think you're tall on the inside. Maybe you do, and that's quite wonderful. But what we need to do is we need to disassociate the characteristics of being generous and warm and intelligent and engaging from the concept of beauty or ugliness.
Interesting.
And if we do that, it's also okay to say someone's beautiful and to say someone's ugly.
21st of July, 1972, Mary and Vince have their 5th child, and his name is Robert. What was your mother's reaction to your birth?
Well, when I was born, I didn't look quite as wonderful as I do now. I had a massive tumour in the middle of my face, which pushed my eyes to the side of my head. So my eyes were here where these dints were, or are in the side of my head. I had 2 deformed legs. And, in the early 70s when I was born, there were no scans, there was no warning that I was coming. And my mother had a sense that something was wrong. It was quite a long labour. And she asked as soon as I was born, she didn't ask, is it a boy or a girl? She said, is my baby okay? And the doctor said, no, he's not okay. He's got a big tumour in his face and something wrong with his legs. And my mum basically sent me away without seeing me. So she
More than that, though, she described this baby that she hadn't seen in those days and weeks afterwards as an it.
Yes, she had real trouble relating to me as her son. She went off back to the maternity ward. I went to the nursery. My dad saw me the day I was born, but she refused to see me for a week. She just couldn't engage with the sense that she had a child with so many problems. And then eventually a doctor there convinced her to come and see me, and she did. And she looked down at me in my cot and decided then and there that she didn't want to take me home. And she then spent a few weeks talking to everyone, the local MP, her local doctor, her priest, to try and find as much support as she could for the notion of not bringing me home.
Yes, but then she spoke to these siblings of yours,
Yes,
the kids back at home.
Yes.
And they became the arbiters.
They did. I think Mum was worried. Mum was really worried that what the impact of bringing me home would have on her 4 normal children and the impact I'd have on their upbringing. And she got to a point where she thought if she was so worried about the impact I'd have on them, that she should give them a say in whether I came home. So on Exhibition Wednesday in Brisbane, almost 42 years ago, She brought my siblings up and they all got to nurse me for about 5 minutes each. And then that Saturday at home, they all sat down around the kitchen table and Mum and Dad asked them one by one, should we bring Robert home? And thankfully, one by one, they all said yes.
Pretty incredible, isn't it, that a family conference like that with children can determine the future, your future. It determined your future.
Yeah, I look. Who's to say what would have happened if they'd said no? But I think my parents and my mum was really genuine in that sense of wanting to know what they thought. And I think if they'd said no, there'd be a really good chance that I didn't come home.
And the great thing is that your parents and your mum became your staunch defender. They had different approaches. We might get to that. But I wonder, your mother wrote a very detailed diary and you have used that to piece together this memoir. Does reading that, even if we let go of what we know of what our parents might have felt about us as children, whether we were unwanted or whether we were a mistake, or even if we let that go in adulthood, that can still eat away at our psyche. It can still be a burden to us. Has knowing your mother's rejection of you in those first weeks and months, or weeks really, been a burden?
Yes and no. Intellectually, it has been sometimes, but never emotionally. And I think the key to that was I always knew that part of the story from a very early age. Mum kept her diary, it's a little blue Collins diary, on her bedside table on the side of the couch. And it was there. It wasn't hidden away in a drawer. It was there for everyone to see. And she'd pick it up and write in it every now and then. And so, you know, as a kid, I'd be curious and I'd pick it up and flick through the pages and look at her extraordinarily neat handwriting compared to mine. And I'd get to the stage where I'd ask her to read from it. And I clearly remember when I was like 7 or 8 saying, "Oh, Mum, can you read from your book again about when you didn't want to bring me home?"
Wow.
And I can understand at an intellectual level that's hard and that's hard to grasp. But, you know, it came from a place of warmth and knowing that even if the journey was hard, the end point was quite nice.
Some of the names you were called as a kid, and even though it sounds like you made friends pretty easily, you were part of a big family, there was a lot going on, there was a lot of warmth in your life. You know, even if kids like kids, they can be absolute cretins. And you write really viscerally, I think, about the names you got called. You know, cripple, transformer. That was kind of a compliment, I thought.
Yeah, like transformer.
Naming the legs. But words like flat nose or toe nose did eat away, didn't they? At you?
Yeah, and I think it's probably worth explaining the context of that. When I was about 4 and a half, the doctors decided they were going to do a big operation to remake my face. They'd already removed the tumour from the front of my face, but they were going to move my eyes from the side of my head to the front of my head. And they needed to make me a new nose. So they amputated some deformed toes off my legs, and they used those toes to build me a new nose, which was just amazing, an amazing thing to do in 1977.
And it attracted headlines.
Yes,
it was
yes.
a 12-hour procedure,
Yep.
wasn't it? It was a really mammoth event.
Yeah, and you know, it did get some attention, and some kids at school read about it, and I got the nickname Toe Nose. And I was pretty resilient, and I went to an all-boys school. I was pretty resilient. I gave as good as I got. But that one was really hard to get past, and I think about it a lot because I went through this whole sort of process where I'd get called toe nose, I'd be ashamed of my face, I'd be ashamed of what the doctors had done, and then I'd go through this whole sort of circular process where I was ashamed of being ashamed. And so that's why it had an awful lot of power.
But you seem to have developed a really strong sense of self. And I'm interested to know where that came from, but also what it felt like to you being in the skin you were as a kid, looking from the inside out.
Well, I think it probably in some ways it helped me develop a sense of self faster because everyone's different. I think it takes some people a lot longer to realise how they can define themselves as being different from others and what their internal value as a person is. But for me, there are obvious differences. Other kids had legs, other kids had a normal nose and normal eyes, and I didn't. So that, I think, put me on that sort of fast track to defining myself, or defining my sense of self a lot faster, really quickly. And, you know, it's really hard to piece together all of the things that helped do that. You know, writers like to talk about characters having a sense of agency and characters making decisions that are active choices that either go right or wrong, but they're actively making those choices. And those things are important, and most of us on a daily basis are making those sorts of choices, and I have made a lot of those sorts of choices across my life. But the other thing that I think is really important and became really important for me really quickly was understanding that our lives are also like a game of snakes and ladders. Like you end up on, you know, you roll a 6 and you end up on that square and you go down a snake and you're 15 squares back. And you can't control that. And you need to reach a point of not just saying that stuff doesn't matter, but saying that if you want to live a full life, you need to accept that there's things you can't control 100% of it.
Big stuff for a kid to grapple with. And
I figured all that out when I was 8.
Yeah, of course. Classic. Has your relationship to... Well, no, actually, I want to ask this. So you had this massive surgery as a little kid, but at the end of year 9, incredibly, your parents invested you with this decision. What was the decision you made? And I think it sounds like it was fundamental to your sense of well-being, really at that point in your life, but also for the rest of your life.
Well, when I was in grade 9, the doctors said to my parents, "We want to do another operation on Robert." They were very, very keen to do some more work on me before I hit puberty. And I think doctors are like artists as well, that they don't want to leave a work half unfinished. And I think they looked at my face, which was massively improved and meant I could see properly and interact with the world much better. But they thought, you know, 10 years later, there was a lot more they could do, that there was a lot they could improve with my face. So they said to my parents, "We want to do another operation on Robert. We'll fill in the gaps in the side of his head. We'll fix up some scars. We'll rework his nose. And when we rework his nose to make it look a bit more normal, that'll emphasise that his eyes are still a little bit too far apart, so we'll put them a bit closer together." My parents then did the single worst thing they have ever done to me in my life and said, "Oh, well, Robert, you're almost an adult. It's your choice." And I don't know, but I'm pretty sure grade 9 boys are the worst form of humanity. Anywhere, ever possible, there is nothing worse. And, you know, I wasn't a particularly upstanding example of grade 9 boys either, so, you know, that was a lot for someone to think about. So
you did think about it.
I did think about it. We went around all of the sort of options and talked about what it would involve and what I'd look like at the end and how long the procedure would take. And then we got round to talking about the risks, and they said, "Well, you know, they're working on your face, there's a lot of blood there, you could end up with an infection. The procedure could go wrong, it could undo some of the work they did when you were 4.5. And they said, "Oh, and because we're moving the orbit of your eyes, there's a 1 in 4 chance you'll go blind." And so when we were having the discussion, and when it was decision time, we were sitting down again at the kitchen table, my parents, me, and my elder brother Michael, who's almost 10 years older than me, and we talked through the risks, and we came to the bit about going blind, and he said, "Well, what use is it looking pretty if he can't see himself?" And I think I'd probably would have reached the same decision anyway, but that just really focused my mind on why I would want to have the operation and why I wouldn't. And I just decided then and there, and I said to my parents, no more. I don't want to do
Enough.
it. And I don't want any more operations.
Are you at peace with that decision now as a nearly 42-year-old?
Sitting here right now, I am. I can't say I'm at peace with it every day and every minute of every day, but I'm at peace with it most days and most of the time. You know, sometimes I'd like to look prettier. I keep hoping I'm going to I'm going to grow into my age and end up looking like George Clooney, but...
He's overrated.
I figure I'll get free coffee, but, it's not...
We've been talking about...
But that's not going to happen. And, this face it's the face my friends know, it's the face my wife loves, it's the face my daughter knows, and I'm pretty comfortable in it.
What did having Imogen mean to you?
Well, it meant several months of being scared shitless of being a dad. It gave me it did give me a really good sense, and a kind of, I think it helped me reach some peace with the notion of beauty. She's a very beautiful child, she's a very beautiful baby, and people kept asking me, do you want a boy or a girl? And I'm going, literally, I just want a baby with 10 fingers and 10 toes. I was a bit worried about what I would think if I had a child with a disability or a deformity. And I kind of went through that whole circle of the sort of toe-nose name-calling again, because I kept thinking, well, if I have a child, I don't want to have a child who has major issues. And part of that was I knew what it was like to go through that, but part of it was also, in some way, I'd feel responsible. And then I'd get to a point thinking, well, if there's anyone who can do a decent job of raising a child with a disability or a deformity, it should be me. And I kind of made my peace with that. So she's grown into a almost 12-year-old girl who's taller than me when I've got my artificial legs off, and make sure I know that. No.
Yeah, she'd be reminding you of that
all the time.
12-year-olds. How is your relationship then to, given that this is the Happiness and Its Causes Conference,
yes.
how is your relationship to what's important to you and happiness, maybe they're separate themes, changed over the years? Maybe it's a question about priorities, I don't know. I
think, for my mind, it's about my sense of happiness comes from knowing myself better. And it goes back to that question about sense of self. I had to make peace with how I was, with my disability, with my deformities, very early on, or I just simply wouldn't be here. I would have taken a different option. And I made peace with that. And
thrived in the workplace.
Yep.
And, blitzed high school and...
Oh, blitz is a generous word.
Oh, I think you would.
Well, I did get ducks of maths in society,
Excuse
which
me.
is like,
No, but you also got some amazing figure in the English,
I did okay.
You did okay.
And I think having that sense of myself really... early on, really helped me deal with issues going forward and saying, okay, what are the things that I'm dealing with in my day-to-day life that are pains in the butt, that are annoyances, that are problems if I want to get a job, all of that stuff, versus what are things that attack my sense of self. And it's like I've got a pretty strong sense of that.
What about in your relationships, your intimate relationships? Because, the memoir's lovely, your kind of quest to flirt with girls in your teens.
Yep.
But that's significant, isn't it? That process of finding yourself in an intimate relationship as well. Not just your public face, but your private face.
Well, I keep thinking that, I use the way I look as an excuse to sort of avoid trying to interact with girls a lot during my teens. And I think I just avoided making a lot of the mistakes that everyone makes, that I needed to make when I was a lot younger. So I think some of that happened a bit later than it should have. But, I still find it hard when my wife tells me she thinks I'm beautiful. And that sounds dishonest, but it just sounds strange to me. But I understand that it's real for her, and that's the important thing.
Mm. Thank you, Robert, very
Thank
much.
you.
It's wonderful
Thank
to talk
you.
to you. Robert Hoge.